Hey everyone, this is Celeste Ryan, project leader and admin and one of the writers for Sonic Legacy. How's it going?
Hey everybody, it's your boy Alf, project admin, writer, supporter. What's up?
Obscure metaphysical explanation to cover a phenomenon, reasons judged out of the shadows to explain away that which cannot be explained. Call it parallel universes or just insanity. Whatever it is, you'll find it here on the Sonic Legacy podcast. I'm the writing director, Ninebreaker.
Why do you always do this?
And welcome to Night Vale.
So, as the title says on here, we wanted to actually talk a little bit more about the world within the comic on here, like all the different things behind the scenes that led up to the current day within the comic run, things to kind of understand how the world works, what makes it tick, things like that. So I am going to pass the ball over to Nine right now, who actually had somewhat of a layout for all these talking points.
Genius that I am, of course. Well, with any like we talked about in the last podcast, any world worth its salt, you start from the very beginning, right? Like you start where the world originates, how it came to be, what was the cause of it, what was the point of reference, because as we all know, nothing's really new under the sun. So what frame of reference do we have? Well, in this case, it's from the Sonic Chronicles video game on the DS. I'm not sure if any of you have played it, but in the very beginning of the game, there's this quote by Gerald Robotnik talking about the fourth civilization. That single line is what spawned the creation of Sonic Legacy.
I mean, to an extent. You also forget that Sonic Battle also talked about it. Because Sonic Chronicles it rode the back of Sonic Battle. Because if you read all of Gerald's research entries, if you play all the character stories twice, you get more details that he was researching the fourth civilization, which were the echidnas 4,000 years ago.
It's unfortunate those journals contradict themselves later on, in battle, I mean.
A little bit. Still a lot that could be adapted from it, though.
Oh,
So,
of course.
like Nine said there, for there to be a fourth great civilization, there would have to be a first, second, and third. So, me being the dummy
Oh,
that
yeah.
I am, I'm like, okay, well, what are these civilizations? When did they exist? What did they contribute? So, after some time, the different members of the writing team here at Legacy think that for the most part, we have all of that figured out here, minus like a few transitionatory pieces.
Indeed. Uh, like any great Genesis. Oh, oh fuck. Like any great Genesis to a story, you got to start somewhere. And in our case, the story starts with the first civilization, the very beginning of the timeline of Mobius. Also, before I actually get into the topic of the civilizations, I just want to note something that might be on any listeners' minds about why we're calling it Mobius and not Earth or some like generic planet name. It's because it's a nod towards the official American releases of Sonic, calling it his planet. Since we don't have an official name for the Sonic species beyond what their animal names might be, calling them Mobians avoids confusion and the needless hassle of creating like some weird alien structure. Like we don't need a rehash of the Zorda, I think.
Oh god, the Zorda.
Oh yeah.
Oh god, the Zorda. Don't remind me.
It's just a very familial term that most Sonic fans, especially comic fans, are comfortable with.
You don't really want to alienate your crowd anyway, so you got to start on like familiar common ground. Well, to start off, we'll have to look at the first civilization, and as I'm sure as anyone might guess, that's way, way back when. So, in this context, dinosaurs, or saurians if you want to get um, theological.
Reptilian based. I guess you could consider them Mobians as well, but the thing is, they're not like mammals or anything, because way back in our history, of course, we had dinosaurs, reptilians, and everything. So figuring, why not have a race that was akin to that?
They were essentially the first intelligent life to inhabit Mobius. And that all started when they discovered these powerful rocks that held limitless energy in them. Can you guess what those are?
Yes, Nine. Yes, we know what they are.
I just like being pedantic sometimes. Give me a break.
Although,
These rocks... Huh?
I was just going to say, we kind of skipped the whole Nexus thing, though.
Oh, fuck, we did.
So before we go further into the first civilization, because Nine got his cards out of order here, we also decided to come up with how everything came to be. In a very broad and general sense.
I don't think I wrote down
Not in
what
detail,
the Nexus
no.
was. It's because we haven't really... the Nexus.
There's a lot of points that are yet to be filled out, and that we only have like the very core idea of it too, not in a fleshed out meaning. But
the unfortunate reality. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry about that. The unfortunate reality about that is that these topics won't be touched on for quite some time, so we haven't exactly figured out how they tie in, but they do. We've got a general concept of how they do, but since they're like so far away, it hasn't really been at the forefront of our creative process.
We know what it does, we just haven't figured out how it works yet.
That's right.
Most of these aren't even going to be direct story points anyway. Like, this is mostly background information for most of it. But like all dimensions, like all universes, they all have a starting point. And so in the legacy world and everything, the focal point of everything is this dimension that we decided to call the Nexus, because it's the connecting point between all realities.
If you want to think of it in layman's terms, it's the universe between universes.
Yeah, we could run with that. But basically it's filled with this primordial raw energy. And every so often, that energy will rupture off into its own dimension, if you will. So, Sonic's dimension, everything you want to call it, we just kind of dubbed it the Chaos Dimension, because if you want to go into alchemical terms, when you think of alchemic terms, you think of fire, water, wind, and earth being the building blocks of all matter and everything. And this, it boils down even further to chaos energy. Chaos energy is at the core of all alchemic terms, the building block of the universe. This universe, at least.
One of the first definitions of the word chaos is primordial energy anyway.
Yeah, in Greek origin, chaos was primordial energy, and it was... I would have to pull out the Greek footnotes that I had on there. The term chaos has evolved over the years in many senses.
So we're using quotation marks chaos energy within the world building of Legacy, not so much as a hand waving mechanic like, oh, how did that work? Chaos energy. We've actually applied a more scientific principle to it. It is a thing that exists, that is harnessable, tangible, and formable.
Yeah, science, bitch.
You could theoretically pour chaos energy into a cup. It's a tangible thing within the world building of Legacy.
Although you would need massive amounts of it to be able to have it in a state like that.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, you can compress it into rocks.
You can compress it into rocks that have nearly limitless power. Hey, now.
So in this universe, you have chaos energy all throughout the cosmos within that universe. So you have, on this planet, Mobius, you have condensations of that energy that over time have manifested into 7, basically relics, ores, rocks, whatever you want to call them, at different points of the world that our first civilization, now that we're back on order on the cards, discovered.
Yeah, these rocks that the first civilization discovered, using techniques that are now lost to time, they fashioned these rocks into perfectly cut gems. These rocks would later become known as Chaos Emeralds, named after the very concept of primordial energy itself.
Now, the first civilization you're not going to get a lot of screen time on unless we actually figure out what we want to do with one particular character that we won't mention or go into details with, because that one could be a story spoiler. But the first civilization had a gift of foresight. They were kind of prophetic in nature. They saw all of these events that would have happened into the future that would have devastated the planet, and they tried to take countermeasures on them. The first civilization is the one that constructed the Gaia temples at those 7 spots in the world where the emeralds were first discovered, as well as just a whole bunch of ancient technology. There's not a lot of details that we really have for the first civilization yet, because there's still plot holes that we have with them that we need to figure out, as per last night's discussion that we had.
Mostly concerning the second civilization, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Ultimately, first civilization didn't prepare enough or had something happen during preparations, and they were ultimately wiped out by an ice age.
The biggest thing concerning the first civilization is how they were the ones to prophesize the cycle of creation and destruction, mostly concerning Gaia itself.
The Dark Gaia and Light Gaia cycles, correct.
Yeah.
They worshipped Light Gaia as its creator that's benevolent. So these temples around the world were shrines to honor and respect Light Gaia.
That's one of the bigger story beats that we wanted to address, was the concept of Dark and Light Gaia itself. Since they're like talked about in multiple games, I mean, it'd be kind of foolish not to flesh out their origin in some manner.
We still have a lot that we wanted to figure out with Dark Gaia, Light Gaia, outside of just, oh hey, they're a boss and entities in Unleash, and then they're gone.
Yeah, we were looking at something like, not so much the common ideology of like, okay, Light Gaia is by definition good, and Dark Gaia is, inherently evil. More so that they're just basically like two sides to the same force.
Nature has to have balance, after all.
It's not that like one is good and one is bad. Yeah, what you just said. A balance to it. And we're still trying to figure all that out. Yay, Sonic lore.
It's everyone's favorite subject. But focusing past the first civilization, we were going to move on to the second, which in the Legacy timeline were actually going to be the Babylonians that crashed upon the planet earlier on in history.
Oh yeah, the Babylonians.
Good old Sonic
Birds.
lore and everything.
Alien
you say
birds.
Birds, but like, have you ever seen a full-blooded Babylonian?
Have you?
No, exactly. All we know is that the murals depict them as kind of like both avian and humanoid.
Yeah, okay, so like anthropomorphic birds.
And we know they were technologically advanced enough to have like giant ships that could travel the stars.
Arc of the Cosmos, gravity manipulation, all of these things.
I mean, hell, in the first Riders game, when you get to the Babylon Garden racetrack, at a certain point you like trip an alarm, and like this ancient defense system like comes to life. It's wicked. Yeah. So they were way up there when it comes to like how advanced their civilization might have been.
Mm-hmm. Now, they ended up propagating most of the world there once they couldn't return to the stars. They made that world theirs. But, once again, not too many details that we have at that time, because it's stuff that's so far away, and Riders isn't going to be covered for a very long time in Legacy. But their civilization was crushed because of the prophesized Dark Gaia, Light Gaia cycle. They were around when the world was torn asunder and rebuilt again. It didn't wipe their race out, but it crushed their civilization. And that's how the Babylon Garden was lost as well.
It's because of this cycle of destruction and creation and the burial of Babylon Garden that they lost a lot of their identity.
And eventually they did breed out.
They didn't really have a choice. That's
Move
about all we really have, though, for them.
for now. Moving along the timeline, though, we would get to the third civilization here, which will be a slight turn, which will actually be humans.
Humans!
Humans
Way
in
back
my Sonic lore?
way back
Yeah!
then,
Humans!
These humans, so humans in Legacy Verse cannot harness chaos energy.
Not naturally.
Not naturally, unless you have like the very, 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 very rare exception where you have like psychics or kinetic characters. But those are like a very, very rare instance. But these humans were also technologically advanced. They figured out how to harness chaos energy through technology, kind of like magic tech in a sense, if you will. Because at this point, humans and Mobians were at war with each other. They did not like each other, and they wanted to have an edge against them. Now, eventually, these humans would come across all 7 Chaos Emeralds, and they would want to have a way of combating them. They would be like, well, these Mobians have these emeralds that they could do things with, and we can't really do anything, so how could we stop it in its tracks?
Because of the humans' technological prowess, they created the Master Emerald as a way to combat and suppress the Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah, they got a hold of the 7 Chaos Emeralds and artificially created the Master Emerald as a means of negating them, controlling them. But the cataclysmic power of its creation literally wiped out their race. Like, nothing was left of it.
Oops.
Yeah, they destroyed themselves in the process.
Big oopsie. Now, see,
Zero-sum event.
Oh, yeah. Now, see, the biggest part of this cataclysmic event concerning the humans is that at the time, they were inhabiting this planetoid that hovered occasionally over Never Lake. I'm sure you know it. It's called Little Planet. Now, these Little Planet-like denizens, they weren't present at the time of the Master Emerald's creation. So, they lacked a presence on Mobius for quite a while. And they didn't come back until later on in the year, and by that time, the Master Emerald would later fall into the hands of a separate race entirely.
Yeah, when the humans came back from their inhabited little planet, when it came back into contact with Mobius, TLDR, they hopped off like, hey guys, what did we miss? Oh, our race is dead. Maybe we should repropagate.
Yeah, I think real quick, just to point this out, just because me listening to it, I'm starting to realize we're not. Other people might be missing these details. When we talk about these civilizations existing, there is a generous amount of time span between each great civilization. That's the colloquial term we're using, the great civilization. So
these are thousands of years apart.
Yeah. We're explaining humans being the third great civilization. That doesn't mean that also Mobians didn't exist at that time, because that was the whole thing. There was conflict between humans and Mobians. Humans at this point in history just happened to be the dominating force. They were the current great civilization. They weren't the only civilization. It's not like, okay, the Saurians existed and then they all died out, and then there were just Babylonians and then they all died out, and then there was just humans and then they all died out.
Correct.
And now there's just Mobians. The species at some point between these eras of time may have interacted with each other. But when we use the term great civilization, we're referring to one specific time in history where one specific species was exponentially more dominant than the others.
Correct.
It was just sounding to me, listening to how it was explained, it just sounded to me like these were, event horizons. Like, one civilization completely ends before the next one even begins. I just wanted to clarify that real quick.
No, you got a good point. It might help to think of these civilizations as eras or ages, like Bronze Age.
Moving beyond that, though, Like we said, the survivors of Little Planet, we'll call them survivors at that point, realized that they were the last of their kind and that they would have to repropagate their species. So during that whole time span where they're doing their own thing, trying to rebuild their society, much time has passed. The Master Emerald, Chaos Emeralds have all fallen through different hands, and ultimately it was claimed by one of the clans of the Echidnas, which would be the Knuckles Clan. Now, the Knuckles Clan originally were honorable warriors. Like, they were very in tune with nature as well. Because when you talk to Tikal, and she talks about her grandmother being the previous chief, how they were at peace and everything. But her grandmother knew about the Master Emerald Shrine, the Chow, and everything. So it's not like that shrine was any kind of secret, like some people might think that it is. But when the hands passed down to Pachacamac, who became the leader of the Knuckles clan, he was power hungry. He wanted to expand their territory and make them a more prominent race, which eventually encroached upon the territory that the Nocturne clan had, which the Nocturne were another clan of echidnas at the time that were kind of more symbiotic with their technology and nature. They were peaceful at that time, but once Pachacamac started pushing in on them, they fought back, and it eventually led into this bloody war between the two as both of them keep expanding each other's territory. And at first, it could be assumed that the Knuckles clan was stronger. They were already warriors. And so the Nocturne depended upon the technology that they had. So that's when they created the Gizoid army. Or at least your basic models that you see, like the foot soldiers. And they were able to fight back. Eventually, the Nocturne created a very high-level model Gizoid. It didn't have a name at the time, but later on it would be rediscovered and dubbed Emerald by Sonic. But Emerald was the highest level of technology that they created. It was their magnum opus. It's stated in Chronicles as well by Nestor the Wise that Emerald was around for those fights, which means that the Perfect Chaos incident had not occurred at that point. Once they created Emerald and Emerald was leading the forefronts of those fights, they were really pushing back the Knuckles clan, and that's why Pachacamac realized we need these Chaos Emeralds so that we could have the power to fight them back and take their land and everything. That's what ultimately triggered the Perfect Chaos incident and virtually wiped out the Knuckles clan. Now,
the original intention of the Knuckles clan, after almost all the humans went extinct with the creation of the Master Emerald, knowing the destructive power of both sets of emeralds, they constructed a series of guardianships and said shrine, as they, I wouldn't say feared the power, but they respected it to a degree, ensuring those didn't fall into the wrong hands. That's why the Guardians exist. It wouldn't be until Pachacamac came into power as the chieftain of the Knuckles clan would he try to seize the Chaos Emeralds again, which would spark the Chaos incident, and, well, I guess most of it from then on is history, right?
Poorly documented history, but yes. Now, it didn't completely kill out the Knuckles clan because you would have had to have a certain amount of echidnas left to survive long enough to let the race dwindle down 4,000 years later to just Knuckles left. So, Angel Island, when Tikal sealed away Chaos and herself, it caused a massive rift of power that did tear out that section of the land, and that became Angel Island. With the Knuckles clan out of the way, the Nocturne, under its leadership of, I never knew if it was pronounced Ix or Ix from Chronicles. Either way, he wanted to continue conquering. So the Nocturne basically dominated most of the known world. And so you could assume that, like, all these other races, like whatever humans were left, different Mobians, became thrall races under them. They were the number one power in the world. Now, we don't quite have the details yet, but we assume that at one point Emerald grew too powerful and caused an event that caught the attention of Argus, this interdimensional eldritch that saw the Nocturne as this high up enough race that they needed to be sealed away from the world inside of the Twilight Cage, and that's when the Argus event occurred. Now, Emerald was not taken along with the capital of the Nocturne. Gerald Robotnik found him outside ruins where Nocturne would have once been, as seen in the Sonic Battle footnotes when you research his entries. Now,
Quite possible. It's quite possible that Argus itself saw this conflict between Nocturnus and Knuckles and was like, "Well then, better lock these away where they won't die out."
Except he
But
would have come too late anyway, because the Perfect Chaos incident had already happened at that point. But,
would the Perfect Chaos incident have been what got his attention?
No, because he just came in immediately and just scooped him out. So it would have been Emerald. Emerald at the height of its power that did. But in Chronicles, we only saw the capital of Nocturne taken, so you could assume that there were still remnants of the Nocturne race throughout the world at that point. And after both the Argus event and the Perfect Chaos incidents, their numbers would have just dwindled down, and they realized we need to put aside the differences and just hybridize our community if we hope to survive. So, in Legacy at least, you had the survivors of the Knuckles clan integrate with the survivors of the Nocturne clan, and that's why you have technological relics on Angel Island, such as the Sky Sanctuary, the teleporters and things in the Hidden Palace, technology that the Knuckles clan did not have. Because they were more tribal and nature-based.
While we're on the topic of Angel Island, I just want to say that Carnival Night Zone isn't on Angel Island. Thank you.
Yeah, it's completely unrealistic to have Carnival Night on Angel Island. But, we wanted to hybridize those two because it would also give you a sustainable enough population that 4,000 years later, it would have at least dwindled down to where at least Knuckles was left. But Knuckles would still be the last guardian of the Master Emerald. Which the Guardians were there to ensure that Chaos never was released from the Emerald to incur its wrath.
That's not to say the Knuckles clan didn't have their own sets of prophecies and murals, as seen in the Hidden Palace.
Past the Argus event and the Perfect Chaos incident, the two superpowers of the world, for the most part, ceased to be, and the rest of the races just continued along their own development until about 2,000 years prior to Issue 1, where humans and Mobians set aside their differences and made unification efforts to just singularize their society. Now, there's different places in the world that are, for the most part, just Mobian or just human, but they're no longer at odds with each other.
I wonder what kind of scenario could have brought two warring species together. I bet that would make some kind of good romantic novelization.
Oh God, get out of here!
Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Here we go, boys.
You know, I haven't played that series.
It's not bad from what I hear. Anyway.
But for the most part, that's the world history up to modern date without, like, spoiling all the actual in-issue stories.
The fifth great civilization can just be equated to the present day or the modern era, where human and Mobius society have integrated into a single society roughly 2,000 years ago, although there are still cities in the world where one race is predominantly occupied, like Mobotropolis.
Yeah, Mobotropolis on Westside Island is, for the most part, a Mobian society. Not to say that there wouldn't be some humans living there, but it's predominantly Mobian. Same thing like the America continent, if you will. We don't have a name for the continents themselves, because, like, all the locations in Unleashed were cities. So, like, you'll have the landmass that's basically North America that's going to have your places like Station Square, Central City, Empire City, Westopolis, and all of that.
Well, we haven't exactly figured out the continent names yet. At least for the most part, where the human civilization is... Where the humans live mostly, I've been running with the idea of the United Federation continent. I'm not sure if that's something we've approved just yet, but it's being kicked around.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be a name for the continent. That'd be the name of a country, like how the United States is the United States. The United Federation could be the United Federation.
Right. not. Yeah.
So you're still
country,
back at square one, needing a continent name.
the Americas. Oh, my head. Ouch.
Now that we covered the history side of things, what were some other points that you wanted to discuss on here, Nine?
Other points? Well.
Yes, Mr. Writing Editor.
Oh, well, gee, thanks. Well, we covered most of the world. What's the next biggest thing we could... Oh! What brought these land structures to be how they are? What are zones, and how are they shaped so weirdly compared to other places?
Yeah, that would be a good talking term, because you have areas within the world that for the most part are pretty natural, but you also have like the wacky Sonic style zones with like floating platforms, corkscrews, and everything.
To explain this nonsense, we have to go back to the very beginning. Back to chaos energy.
Air quotes, chaos energy. I'm not saying it's chaos energy, but chaos energy.
There you go.
So,
Like we said earlier, in alchemical terms, it's like how fire, water, and earth were the building blocks for, in real life Earth. Chaos energy is the very fabric of the universe, and the architect behind the very concept of matter and energy as a whole within Legacy. To tell it apart from like like how the Nexus is basically 1
for the
second,
most
I
part,
got my
just raw energy.
card mixed up. Like how the Nexus is the universe between universes, and basically what separates dimensions. For example, the soul dimension. To tell it apart from others like soul and chaos, we've established that the dimension is the chaos dimension. It was created via excess amounts of energy within the Nexus, and it grew from there like exponentially. Think of it like a Big Bang, and which it just comes from like an origin point consistently, only for multiple dimensions. Because of this excess chaos energy creating the chaos dimension, it would sweep throughout the galaxy, the universe, yada yada, and then we eventually come to Mobius, which is where a good bundle of the energy resides. It twisted and shaped the landmass as it was. You can think of these there are normal locations like cities, like West Island, South Island, Christmas Island, so on and so forth. But then you get to these other places called zones. Now, to explain these zones, these are areas which are shaped, twisted, and created through an excess amount of chaos energy residing within that area. Now, the chaos energy itself cannot manipulate matter as is, but it is embedded into the earth, water, so on.
This might be a bad analogy. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like chaos energy itself is the cells of the planet, and these zones would be relatable to like a cancer where the very building blocks of the planet itself have kind of just gone out of control. Like it's made up of the same thing, just so drastically different, so mutated, that it's
there's just too much of the energy itself, so it causes weird alterations in the landscape.
The term zone is just because of the actual end-world definition of zoning off territory. So basically, Green Hill Zone would just be a section of this transformed land and everything that's just zoned off, like different sections of the world. They recognize it as, hey, it's this area, we're going to zone it off and call it this.
Yeah. A zone is any landmass, any area where chaos energy has gone awry or has created abnormal changes in the structure.
These zones are officially recognized by whatever group or governmental body is nearby enough to classify these zones as zones. So and they're they're zoned off as such because of their inherent nature and their unpredictable, um, origin point.
Was the first one ever discovered and cataloged Green Hill Zone?
Read on this magazine to find out. uh, uh, like I said a few minutes ago, chaos energy itself cannot mold structures or land masses by itself. Like Celeste said way long ago, if you put it into a cup and you pour it on like a piece of grass, it's not gonna alter it like in any way, even if you somehow manage to pull enough of it into a cup somehow. To get to the effect that we're talking about and how zones themselves are created, we have to get to the very like center of it. There's this ore, I would think. It's a type of metal that was recently discovered. We're calling it Mobium. It's a metal that has naturally embedded chaos energy. It has fantastic properties that allow it to be manipulated in ways that are unique to itself. Sort of like how you can refine iron from certain ore types, so too you can refine Mobium from this type of ore you mine from zones. It's actually why in issue 6 in the underground zone there was mining carts, equipment all around, because that's one of the mining areas in Mobotropolis that has a good amount of Mobium.
And Mobium, with its unpredictable nature and the chaos energy, areas of the world that have higher concentrations of it tend to have more zone-ish tendencies.
Like floating platforms, rings that might appear around. Oh, and that's another thing, rings. Oh
rings.
Boy.
That's another topic for another video.
I thought rings were a form of currency.
You're actually not wrong. Do you want to explain it, or should I? Actually, I'll explain it. Because rings have in the context of legacy, rings have existed for time immemorial. They're as old as friggin' dirt.
Now, when he says rings have existed, he's referring to the golden rings.
The naturally occurring ones in the environment.
With the rampant chaos energy throughout the world, these small golden rings act as a source of energy. Now, to the normal person, one cannot actually touch or interact with these rings as is.
They
quickly dissipate. That's correct. They're intangible, and they're ethereal, and they quickly dissipate once they're collected by the people that can actually interact with them. That is. But that's a different topic for a different video. Ooh boy.
Yeah, there's a lot of ring lore that we have that there's just not enough time in this one for.
I was just kind of making fun at how the in-game currency is also referred to as rings.
I was gonna.
That's what I was leading up to.
I was actually gonna compound on that point because these rings have existed ever since they were first cataloged way back in the first civilization. The legal tender and currency on Mobius are called rings. Now you know how in our world we have like dollars or euros or pounds or whatever on these notes. Same principle here. People refer to dollars in Legacy as rings. So say you have a 20 ring bill, something like that.
It's like how yen is in Japan, how it's just a static number.
Yeah.
So you don't have like dollars, cents, nickels, quarters, and all that other confusion. It's just rings.
I'm actually pretty proud of that one. Not gonna lie.
And to think that this conversation here was just talking about the world up to the current point, and not even going into like the characters and spoilers and everything.
Yeah, I know, right? It's almost like we're going to have regular podcasts.
Whoa.
But I think...
Yeah, I was going to say, was there anything else?
I think that for the most part we covered it, unless Nine had something else.
Well, since we talked about continents and land masses and all that good stuff, it might be worth to note that the land masses on Mobius are in the shape of. If anyone here has played Shadow the Hedgehog, there's a section in the early part of the game where we're in the gun headquarters, and on one of the screens, they have a map of the world. Now, this map is shaped vastly different to what normal Earth maps look like, and that's basically what we're using as a starting point for what our continents look like. We'll eventually get an official map of the Legacy Mobius out, but it might help to have that as a reference point for if you're having confusion picturing where these continents are located.
Yeah, we're not quite cartographers, and we really wanted to have a good look at maps, so that's something that we're just working on, but the world map from Shadow the Hedgehog was the basis for it.
Indeed.
Something tangible within a game.
Most of our ideas and concepts come from either unused lore from the games, or derived from the original Japanese scripts. We want to try to be as faithful as possible, of course.
Yeah, for the most part, Legacy's built off of the backbone of the games, but there's still enough room left that we could interject our own lore in ways to tie everything together as well. But majorly, it's going to be built off the games.
I think the only thing we haven't really covered are the Gaia temples.
Well, we did bring those up in the beginning.
Yeah, very briefly.
Well, yeah, because if you get past that, you get into spoilers.
You're right.
So, I think for the most part, we covered the topics that we wanted to on this podcast, which will leave the last 18 minutes here to do live Q&A here. I know I saw some questions being brought up in that chat earlier. I'm going to pull up the Twitter real quick here to see if no questions were asked there. Okay, so we're going to be hitting up the ones in the chat here. Let me scroll up a bit and see if I can find what the first question is. Let's go here.
Q&A, my favorite.
Well, Patrick S. here has asked, is there a soul dimension? That one is an easy yes, because Rush Adventure, all of that, Blaze, will be adapted. That's still not going to be for a while, though.
But for how it's created is a big old spoiler. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, there's there's a lot to figure out. Thanks, quote unquote, Dark Era Age Sonic.
Aaron and Sonics both asked simultaneously, can you drink chaos energy if you pour it into a cup? I answered in the chat, but I'll answer again. If you could collect enough in a tangible form, then yes, there's no reason why you couldn't. And it would probably taste like Mountain Dew.
Not sure what it'll do to your body after that.
Like we said, it's the very fabric of the universe. Having that in some kind of tangible form that you can ingest would probably do some weird things to you.
Going through the questions here, Carnival Night is where then? That actually devolves into a story spoiler, but what I will say on it is it's not so much a location as much as it is an event.
I think we can actually talk about Casino and Carnival Nights without spoiling too much.
Oh, if you want to take that away.
Okay, well, I'm not going to spoil when or how we see it, but Casino Nights and, in conjunction, Carnival Nights do exist in the world, just not as how you think them they might be. Every year there's this event nearby or inside Central City, Central City being one of the capitals of the of the United Federation. Every year there's this event called Casino Nights where people from all over the world come to visit, to play games, to listen to music, to participate in various activities for both pleasure, leisure, and tourism. Casino Nights, in particular, is for adults, while Carnival Nights is for kids. Because, there are going to be families out there that want to take a vacation, and think of it like a big-ass theme park. Something that Eggman might enjoy, if you really want to get down to it.
Let's see here.
But yeah, it's a yearly event.
JRB asks, if you wanted to integrate any elements from IDW into Legacy, what would those elements be? Honestly, IDW is still a little bit young in its roots, so the only real thing that you can take out of it are just the original characters that they made.
That's the unfortunate thing. There's not too much you can take from IDW yet.
Yeah,
they haven't had enough time to actually flesh out their world.
Yeah,
for right.
Sorry.
Jinx. For right now, it's just like plains on a world with a few cities dotted around. We haven't actually seen too much at all. We just have a few named locations. There's an ocean. That's about it, really.
Yeah, that's something that we would want to give it time.
If we really wanted to pull something from it now, I suppose we could like utilize one of the names. Like, wasn't one of them like Seaside City or something?
Seaside Hill or Seaside. There's a town at Seaside Hill or something. I think that's where Tangle was from.
No, that's Spiral Village.
You're right. They're probably just named after towns next to zones, though.
I'm probably thinking about the one the Chaotix are in. Oh well.
Moving on. Gone with the Wind asked, then what are special stages?
Currently, there are no intentions for special stages. Not currently. Because the Chaos Emeralds reside in their Gaia temples.
That's right.
Originally, my thoughts of the special stages, that weird dimension that you're in and everything, was the Nexus.
That was the original intention, but it sort of developed from there.
So, right now, there's no current plans or thoughts for special stages.
If we can somehow fit it into it without being world immersion breaking, I don't know how to accurately describe special stages, but at the moment, no, not really.
Moving on to the next question here, Kojiro Highwind asked, is Mobium what is inside of Chaos Drives? It is not Mobium, because Mobium is a metal. What Chaos Drives are, we haven't gone too deep into it yet. We just know that Gerald Robotnik was the one who created them. But I would say it's crystallizations of trace amounts of chaos energy. Enough to power a device.
You were talking about how we could possibly put chaos energy into a tangible form. Well, this is one way to do it, but it's crystallized and contained within its own little capsule. The very essence of what that element might be, down to its purest form and into a usable battery. This might be delving a little bit into spoiler territory, just a little bit, but everyone knows the story of the Space Colony Ark. But our version of the Ark had a lot of inventions being made up there that were later sort of integrated into society. But that's for a different time.
I just thought of the most horriblest thing when you talked about condensing chaos energy into like a usable energy form or whatever. I just immediately pictured the Energizer Bunny, but as a Mobian.
Oh boy. Let's see. A very easy question from Aaron Mosquito. So you use rings and dollars to pay items? No, you use rings.
You just the current.
It's paper and coin-backed money named rings. Think of yen from Japan.
Yes, thank you.
There we go. Sonic's Arden Moore asks a question. How will you establish the Neo-Sonic timeline? Since Generations created a new timeline, since Sonic and Eggman know their future in that game, how will it work? Will it be canon?
Time travel!
We haven't touched much on Generations, but I could already say right now that there is no classic Sonic. It's just always going to be the one Sonic.
There's one concurrent timeline.
So there's not going to be any timeline splits. At least not for Sonic.
Oh no!
And that's all I'm going to on that side of things.
Patrick asked, what are some of the country names we talked about earlier in the podcast, we haven't actually come up with all of the country names yet, or continent names,
We
either
just know
either.
cities.
Yeah.
The thing is, in the Unleashed game proper, where we borrowed the city names, Apatos, Chunnan, Empire City, those are just city names. We never actually got the continent names.
Yeah, all of Mobius China isn't Chunnan. That's just like the main hub that they usually go to.
Except for Missouri, that's the only one I can think of. Missouri is the only continent to have an actual name attached to it. Because the city proper you visit in Missouri is Savannah Citadel.
I thought that was just a temple.
Is it? God, I'll have to go back and check again.
Ethan Gomez asks, I have a question. What would happen if Sonic used all the Chaos Emeralds, all the Soul Emeralds, and the Master Emerald all together? What would happen?
He would become real and crawl out of the comic page.
Joking aside, Sonic would not be able to use the Soul Emeralds for reasons that are story spoilers. But he wouldn't be able to.
Mm-hmm. Actually, use of the Chaos Emeralds themselves are also a huge story.
Oh, yeah. It's not anything like Fleetway or anything like that, but I'll just say that using the Chaos Emeralds are very taboo.
Very bad.
You're free to think what that means. We'll get to that here by the end of the Sonic 2 arc.
I'm just going to say it's bad for your health. Good for education. Bad for your health.
Yeah, we'll run with that. Patrick S. asks again, what are city names in? Well, they're all the locations that you already recognize from other bits of Sonic media or the games. Like, you have Mobotropolis, which is a sovereign nation on Westside Island. You've got Sunset Heights on South Island, along with Autobot. We're putting Autobot on South Island, just on the other side in Legacy. Because the Gaia Temple there was the one that was buried away to time in Labyrinth.
Yep. That temple is beneath the earth, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have your cities from Unleashed, like Halaska, Empire City, Spagonia. You've got Soliana, which is also a sovereign nation, not a part of the United Federation.
And then you've got the other cities, Westopolis, Grand Metropolis. Not to be confused with Eggman's ore mining facility, Metropolis.
There are so many metropolises, and Grand Metropolis from Heroes was a different metropolis as well.
Yeah,
I mean, Metropolis is just a term. Yeah, but Metropolis is just a generic term for like any large city or structure. I mean, that's not a name. It's like, oh, this town Metropolis. You know, I mean, you could Superman call one that, but a metropolis is just the term for a very, very large advanced city.
And yet, Eggman named his ore mining facility Metropolis. How weird.
Everyone point and laugh at Eggman.
What a big dummy. 300 IQ, my ass.
Gone with the Wind asks, are the 3D game levels classified as zones? Depends on which ones you're looking at, because there's some that are fairly normal.
If you're thinking about levels from, say, Unleashed, no, those aren't zones. Because you're mostly traveling through the city itself. Unless
Jungle
you get
Joyride.
to Jungle Joyride. Yeah,
Jungle Joyride. Okay, so going back to something we brought up a little earlier here, with Mobium and everything, how it distorts the environment around it if there's large enough supplies, generally you're going to find higher amounts of that near Gaia temples. Because that's just where the Chaos Emeralds typically reside. There's an abundance of Chaos energy in those locations.
Any Gaia temple that's erected in the spot was where a Chaos Emerald was found, and there were 7 in total. So no, between cities and zones themselves, no, there's a clear difference between them.
Yeah, so that one's a more situational location question.
I think we got enough time left for one more good question.
Yeah, if anyone else has another good question, we could go ahead and get that tackled.
Sounds good.
I said good questions, Aaron.
Oh,
Oh.
oof. Don't be a nimpy poop.
Oh no, where
Oh,
are you
boy.
laughing?
No. I just saw the question. Um. Well, what? That about sums it up for today.
I think that's about sums it up, yeah.
Well, we did get one question here. Ethan Gomez asked, "What is the United?" Oh, well, two questions here. These should be quick answers. What is the United Federation? That's just a conglomerate of all the different locations on the America landmass, like Station Square, Central City, Empire City, all of those, Westopolis. It's all part of the United Federation, which is basically the U.S.
Yep, it's where also a lot of the humans on Mobius reside as well.
Majority of them. Patrick asks, "What is the Isle of Diana?" Well, that is Tempest's home place. It is also a sovereign nation. It's an island, not in the same area, South Island, West Side Island, kind of in that archipelago, but it's where most aquatic-based Mobians live. It's kind of a tourist destination as well. It's both a hybrid above and underwater city.
I would say it's to the north, at least on the very top of the Mobian continent itself.
Let's see here. And then last question here.
Picture asked. No, Sonic Art and More. What other parts of Sonic Media will you put into Legacy? That's another quick, easy one to answer. We're putting a little bit of stuff, yeah, from all different kind of continuities. I don't want to use the term cherry picking, but you'll see familiar faces or concepts or names from pretty much all sources of Sonic Media. Stuff from Sat AM all the way up to IDW at some point, just whenever we can work something like that in.
Fleetway, Archie, X,
Yeah.
OSTH, Saturday.
Oh yeah. Fleetway.
Sonic has existed in it. There's more highly a chance that we took something from it. It's not like he said. It's not like we're cherry picking. It's just what fits the context of our world.
The thing is, if we can fit that material into the context of Legacy, then we will fit it in. If we can find a way to make it work, it's getting slapped in there.
Last question, because we have one more thing to address before we close. Picture asked, I don't know if this has been asked, but will other characters from the games make an appearance, i.e. Big the Cat, Chaos Shadow? Pretty much, if they are a video game character, they will be in Legacy at some point.
Yep. Like I said, the games are the backbone.
Yeah. So, all three of the characters he specifically mentioned, Chaos, Big the Cat, and Shadow, will be appearing in Legacy at some point, form, or fashion.
Indeed. That's all I'm really going to say, indeed. I don't want to spoil their involvement.
Big was the villain the whole time.
But yeah, that wraps up the time that we had for the questions there. So before we go ahead and close out here, just wanted to do a little shout out that we tweeted earlier. We are still looking for spare pencilers and colorists. We've got plenty of writers and inkers on the team, probably because several auditioned and passed the last time we did a call out. So if we
hang on. Let me stop you there. I don't like the way you phrase that. We're not looking for spare pencilers. Okay, we're looking for pencilers.
Yeah, spare just kind of got flung in there.
Damn, brutal.
Because while we're good on writers and everything, we're just trying not to write too far ahead. So we just don't have the artist count to really go too far ahead.
Basically, pencilers are the ones that get the ball rolling on any particular issue. After a script is written, pencilers are the backbone of the visual art crew. You can have all the inkers and colorists you want, but if you don't have enough pencilers to keep up with the demands, then you're bottlenecking yourself. So right now, that's what we're looking for more than any other role, because we work on multiple issues at a time. So we'll have multiple crews working on multiple issues at the same time. So we need more pencilers to get the process rolling, so we can streamline our productivity and get issues out at a more um,
A better
a
pace.
steady pace. Yeah.
Yeah,
The last
that's
thing we
the
want to
reason
do
we're
is over.
behind is just because some of the pencilers we had went to do their own projects and everything, like no kind of drama or anything like people like to tease. But some people just burn out of Sonic after a while, and I don't blame them.
Especially after the lack of any communication on Sega's part.
Yeah, still waiting for that 30th anniversary news, Sega.
Sega's like, wait, Sonic's still a thing?
Yeah, surprising, I know.
We just want to mitigate the workload the pencils we do have right now have. We don't want to overtax any one person.
We want them to be able to take breaks after they're done with an issue, not move on to the
we
next
have
issue.
We have some extremely dedicated artists, and we have some extremely talented artists, but we don't want to depend on the same handful of artists to basically create this entire project for us. It's I mean, if they want to work on comics all day and all night for the rest of their lives, hey, more power to you. I've got a perfect opportunity for you right here. But we want to be more inclusive. We won't. I'm actually not sure what I'm trying to say here.
Nice.
No, you're on the right track. It's true though. We don't want to overtax any one artist. That wouldn't be very fair to them.
Yeah, it is easy to get burned out if you work on one project and only one project, for so long. And again, there are so many talented artists out there that are looking for an opportunity. Hey, I want to put my name on something. I want to work on a project. I want to practice so I have something to put on my portfolio. We've had several of our artists that have helped on our project, done work on our comic, that have applied to industries, professional games and comics, and they've used Sonic Legacy as a stepping stone. We don't have any problem with that. It's a bittersweet farewell when you have a talented artist on your team who's worked on, like, say, multiple issues, and you hate to see somebody leave the project. But at the other hand, when you have a member of your staff that you've worked with for months or a year, and they land a job at, like, a big company, and that their time at Legacy, like, helped them achieve that position, it's a really good feeling. We love seeing our artists, prosper and grow and get their names out there.
It's a sense of pride, really.
Yeah, but we need more people to fill those gaps left behind when they leave.
Mm-hmm. It's only natural, really.
Yeah, so before we close out, on the same wavelength as what we're talking about, issue 7 will not be the next issue that comes out. We're going to be focusing on Mobius Legacy issue 1, which is like our version of Sonic Universe. It covers characters and perspectives outside of Sonic's, kind of usually to fit more of the world building and just the broader picture of all the events. Mobius Legacy issue 1 is going to be our next one. All of the pencils have been finished. It's in the process of being inked and colored right now, so we're aiming by the end of August for that one to come out.
Be on the lookout for that soon.
Yeah, that one's going to be a fun one. Any issue that doesn't have Sonic in it is already better by default.
Oof.
Any closing thoughts from anyone before we get out of here?
No, I think that about covers it.
You got anything, AWF?
Not at the moment.
Alrighty. Well, definitely thanks to everyone who dropped on by for this podcast here. We're going to try and have another one at the beginning of next month or the last week. It just depends on how the time rolls. We're going to try and land it on a Saturday. And if we're lucky enough to have the issue 2 2 English, issue 2 dub out by then. Maybe that one's going to have the musicians involved talking about their process on everything.
That'll be interesting.
Alrighty. Well, this is Celeste signing off. Hope everyone has yourself a great August.
Yeah, something, smash that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to check out the Patreon. This is off. See y'all next time.
And most of all, thank you for checking out our comic period.